Your husband thinks he's smart, but he's just the carpet you walk on to reach the fun part. My wife's lover laughed with her at the company party, even snapping his fingers arrogantly to order me around. My wife's alpha male tried to threaten me at her work event, but he never expected my next move. He snapped his fingers at me. That was his first mistake. Hey, can you get me another whiskey, buddy? Only the best you have. Thanks. I didn't flinch. I just nodded. I turned around and walked to the bar. My name tag was upside down, my tie was crooked, my shoes were unpolished. I looked like I didn't belong there. And that was exactly the point, because tonight wasn't about me being seen, it was about me watching. The man who snapped his fingers at me was named Braxton. Of course, it was the kind of name you'd give a pit bull or a line of cologne. He had the shoulders of a football player and a jawline so sharp it probably filed its own taxes. Everything about him screamed Wall Street frat king. And tonight, he was the center of attention. It also turned out he was sleeping with my wife. How do I know? Because I read the text messages, because I found the photos, because I heard the audio file my IT friend recovered from her deleted cloud backups. Yes, the kind of friend you only call when you're ready to ruin your own peace of mind. 3 weeks ago, I would have told you that Sienna was just busy, distracted, tired from work, that we were going through a quiet, rough patch, that these things happen, that people change. But people don't accidentally call their husband by another man's name while they're sleeping. No, not unless their brain is somewhere else entirely. So when she invited me, insisted that I go to her company's spring social gathering, something didn't add up. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to confirm it. I was going to wear the wrong suit, give the wrong name at registration, mumble when I spoke. I was going to disappear into the crowd like wallpaper. And while Braxton drank, boasted, and kept a hand casually on the small of my wife's back, I would become the shadows behind them. And when he snapped his fingers at me as if I were an employee, I realized he had no idea who I was. He didn't know that the man he was scoffing at was the same one who paid the down payment on Sienna's car. He didn't know that the guy serving him a $22 whiskey was the same one who had fixed her water heater last winter when she couldn't reach maintenance. And above all, he didn't know that I had a plan. So I brought him his drink. Appreciate it, he muttered without even looking at me. Then, as he turned back to Sienna, who hadn't even noticed I was gone, he added, "Some guys just know their place." I smiled, not because he was right, but because I knew something he didn't. This whole night was built for him. It wasn't me who didn't belong here, it was him. And by the end of this evening, Braxton would understand, in front of every single one of his coworkers, exactly who I am. And what happens when the quiet guy stops playing dumb? He touched the small of her back. That stupid, confident maneuver that guys like him do. As if it were a reflex, a casual 2-second gesture that says, "This is mine," without uttering a single word. And she didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She didn't correct him. She just smiled. The kind of smile I hadn't seen on her face in months. The kind of smile I thought she had forgotten how to give, but apparently she just needed the right audience. They were standing under a glowing circular chandelier, drinking as if they were the main characters in a Netflix series. Her red dress shimmered. His suit looked like it cost more than my car. Every laugh she gave him took a piece of me, and I kept watching. Calm, silent, invisible. Let me clarify something. I'm not a tough guy. I've never thrown a punch. I once dislocated my thumb trying to open a stubborn pickle jar. I write back-end systems for a freight logistics platform. My coworkers are spreadsheets. But I know how to watch, I know how to plan, and above all, I know how to wait. Braxton didn't notice me again, not even when I circled the open bar with a name tag that said Samuel. It wasn't mine, of course. I took it from the registration table where extra credentials were laid out in neat rows. No one questioned me. I looked clumsy enough to be service staff, which was exactly the point. When people think you're beneath them, they stop seeing you. They talk louder. They let secrets slip. It was sometime between his second and third drink that he leaned in towards her and said it. Does he suspect anything? His voice was low, but the music dipped for a moment, just enough for me to hear. Sienna hesitated for only an instant. Then she shrugged, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "He doesn't ask questions," she replied. "He just trusts me." Braxton chuckled. "A classic. I told you these guys always convince themselves they're the rock. Meanwhile, they're the rug you walk on to get to the fun part." They both laughed. I didn't blink, because what they didn't know What they couldn't know is that I had prepared for this. For all of this, I had spent the last 3 weeks collecting screenshots, voicemails, timestamps, GPS locations. And this was the best part. I had even recorded the conversation Sienna had 2 nights ago when she thought I was asleep on the couch with my headphones on. It turns out white noise machines don't just block out snoring. They also hide a man taking notes in the dark. And this is where it gets interesting. This wasn't just about me. Sienna's company had strict conduct codes, zero tolerance for inappropriate relationships within a department, especially those involving high-level client accounts, like the one Braxton and Sienna were assigned to. I had done my research. I had even spoken to a labor lawyer, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted real, public consequences. I stepped out from behind the bar and headed towards the corner booth I had reserved earlier under a fake corporate name, Northie Analytics. It wasn't a real company, but it sounded real enough to get a spot. I sat down, opened my briefcase, and laid out the envelopes. Each one labeled, each one sealed with copies of what I had. Every printout, every receipt, every explicit text message, even the one that said, "He thinks I'm staying late to fix a press release. I'm in Braxton's car right now. Send help." Crying laughing face. Crying laughing face. Crying laughing face. Funny. Now I was the one sending help to her boss, the firm's legal team, and the wife Braxton swore was just a roommate. I didn't need to confront them. Not yet. I just needed to wait 5 more minutes. Because at exactly 7:45 p.m., the people in charge of everything, the vice president, the HR director, and the outside investor whose name was all over the event signage, would walk through those elevator doors, and when they did, they would find me calmly handing over the truth wrapped in manila paper. Let Braxton touch her back. Let him gloat. He thought I was the waiter, but tonight I was the messenger, and what I was about to deliver would completely ruin his dinner. The moment she saw me sitting in that booth, alone, anonymous, blending into my carefully chosen darkness, I saw it in her eyes. Not recognition, not guilt, not even surprise, just a flicker of discomfort, like the reaction someone has when they see a fine crack in a glass they'd rather not throw away yet. She looked away. I wasn't supposed to be there, was I? Like that. I was supposed to be standing behind her, just out of focus, holding her clutch, offering to take her coat. I was supposed to be quiet, supportive, easy to ignore, but instead I was planted in the corner of the room like a fixed point. The one thing that couldn't be managed. Braxton didn't see me yet. He was too busy enjoying his own performance, recounting some story about a power play during a client meeting in Chicago. The punchline involved him standing up mid-call and shouting, "Either you sign, or you get off my runway," which earned him a round of fake laughter from a table of junior executives trying to impress him. Sienna leaned in closer. Her hand was on his arm. I felt nothing, not anger, not heartbreak, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness that comes after the fall, when you realize the thing you were holding on to has already let you go. I looked at my watch. 7:44 p.m. The elevator chimed. 3 figures stepped out. 2 men in suits, a woman in a navy dress. Corporate royalty. The ones who didn't smile unless they had to. I recognized the vice president immediately from Sienna's LinkedIn page. The woman beside him was, if I wasn't mistaken, the firm's general counsel, and the man following, the lead investor who had just pumped $12 million into Sienna's division and had publicly stated he had zero tolerance for internal distractions. Perfect. I stood up slowly, picked up my briefcase, and moved without hurry. I didn't look at Sienna as I walked past her. I didn't look at Braxton, who was mid-sentence, his hand raised theatrically as if introducing a film. I went straight to the 3 people who were now surveying the room like generals before a battle. "Excuse me," I said softly. "May I have a moment?" At first they blinked, surprised, perhaps even annoyed. But then I opened the briefcase, handed each of them a clearly labeled, clearly organized envelope. Their eyes shifted downward. Something in my calm made them listen. I didn't need to explain anything. The contents would do that for me. And then, for a few seconds, the room seemed to bend around them. Their postures shifted, their brows furrowed. The vice president's mouth formed a tight, neutral line. The woman in navy read faster, flipping through the printouts that included time-stamped images of Braxton and Sienna arriving at hotels hours after late meetings were supposed to have ended. The investor said nothing, just nodded once, and then walked to the bar. I returned to my booth. I sat down and waited. And that's when the evening took an unexpected turn, because instead of confronting them directly, the vice president signaled a nearby coordinator. I watched him whisper something. Within minutes, a silent message spread through the room like a ripple. There's an issue with the investor's schedule. We'll be pausing the event shortly. People began to murmur. Phones lit up. The DJ lowered the music. Then I watched as two members of the firm's security team approached Braxton. It was subtle, professional, but undeniable. They guided him towards the side hallway, away from the crowd. Sienna turned, confused. She followed, but a moment later someone else stopped her. A woman in a blazer with a badge clipped to her side. HR, perhaps. There were no raised voices, no drama, just a silent separation. I thought it would be satisfying. It wasn't, because just before they disappeared from view, Sienna turned, and our eyes met. For the first time that night, maybe for the first time in months, she truly saw me. And what I saw on her face wasn't guilt, it wasn't anger, it was worse. It was fear. Not the kind of fear you feel when you're caught doing something wrong. The kind of fear that comes when you finally realize the person you thought you could break has stopped playing by the rules. And I should have left. Then, I should have walked away knowing I had done what I came to do, but something kept me frozen in place because I knew this wasn't over. And what none of them realized is that this wasn't even the worst I had planned. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat in my car outside the event venue for almost an hour after it was all over, watching the guests leave in clusters, none of them knowing what had really happened behind the scenes. Most were too drunk or distracted to notice the subtle implosion. They would wake up the next morning with champagne headaches and filtered Instagram stories. Sienna wouldn't be one of them. Neither would Braxton. When I finally got home, the house was dark. She wasn't back yet. I expected that. I figured she was somewhere trying to convince HR it was all a misunderstanding or maybe blaming Braxton for everything. That's how she operated, never taking the fall until every exit was sealed. And that's when I realized something that sent a chill through me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't panicked. I was calculating, cold, focused. Around 3 a.m., I opened her laptop. She never logged out of her work email. She assumed I never touched her things. She was right until now. I hesitated for exactly 1 second before opening her inbox. That's when I saw it. The subject line, need a path forward, urgent. Sent to a name I didn't recognize, Deminra, but the domain was the same as her company's. The body of the email was short, defensive, and frantic. I want to be clear that I never intended for my personal life to impact our client relationship. If there's anything I can do to help navigate the fallout from tonight, please let me know. Braxton crossed lines. I was caught in the middle. I value my position. I need options. No apology, no acknowledgement, no remorse, just damage control. And that's when I realized I had underestimated her, because this wasn't a woman who had been swept up in a passionate affair. She wasn't a bored wife who had made a mistake. She was someone who had calculated her risks and moved forward anyway, thinking she'd always have time to fix it. She didn't expect consequences. She expected negotiation. So I gave her none. I didn't reply. I didn't confront her. Instead, I took screenshots of the message, added them to the folder, updated the timestamps. She came home that morning at 6:41 a.m., hair messy, heels in hand, wearing the same dress from the night before and the look of someone who had just barely escaped a burning house. She didn't say anything. At first, she walked into the kitchen, poured water, and sat at the table as if we were going to discuss a difficult day. I watched her closely. Her breathing was shallow. Her hands trembled slightly. She looked at me, trying to decide which version of herself to play. I know you probably heard things, she began slowly. And I need you to understand that not everything is as it seems. I didn't respond, just stared at her. She continued, Braxton is. He crossed a line. He's been inappropriate for a while. I never wanted it to get complicated. I was afraid to say something. He's been pressuring me, manipulating things, and now it's all blown up. I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to protect us. Protect us. Those words hit me like a slap. She wasn't even denying it. She was reframing it, turning herself into the victim and spinning the story before the truth could take hold. I could have confronted her right there. I could have thrown the printed emails on the table. But I didn't, because the moment she said, protect us, I understood something new. Sienna wasn't just afraid of losing her job. She was afraid of losing control. And what she didn't know, what I wasn't going to tell her yet, was that the investor from the night before had already responded to my message, that he wanted to meet, that he had heard rumors about internal conflicts and was grateful for the clarity. And most importantly of all, he had forwarded the entire report to someone named Veralyn. I Googled her, head of external crisis PR, hired only when reputations were on the brink of collapse. Sienna hadn't just lost control, she had invited me into the cockpit without realizing I had already cut the brakes. This wasn't about catching her anymore. It was about seeing how far she would fall before she begged me to help her land. It was 2 days later when the second crack formed. Not in our marriage. That part was already broken beyond repair, but in her carefully constructed professional armor. Until that point, Sienna was still operating under the illusion that she could fix things with charm, apologies, and perhaps a few strategic emails. She kept a low profile, worked late, answered messages as if her job depended on every syllable, and acted as if, just by typing fast enough, none of it would catch up to her. But she didn't know about Veralyn, and she definitely didn't know about Vera and me. It started with a phone call. I was sitting in my car outside the dry cleaners, deciding whether I should pick up my suit, the one from the party night, when my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mr. Rundle. The voice was cold, measured, controlled. This is Veralyn. I understand you've been in contact with Mr. Durbin regarding internal conduct issues at CVY Strategis. I sat up straight. Yes, I submitted some documentation. You submitted a surgical strike, she corrected, which frankly saved us weeks of chaos. I don't usually contact external parties directly, but your submission was precise and you knew exactly who needed to see it. You have a gift for clarity. That might have been the first compliment I'd received in months. She continued, I'd like to invite you to a meeting, off the record, of course. There are implications to what you provided that go beyond HR violations. That made me pause. Implications. What she didn't know, or maybe she did, was that I hadn't sent everything yet. What I had given the firm was enough to expose Braxton's behavior, enough to raise serious questions about Sienna's conduct, but it wasn't the whole story. Not by a long shot. I agreed to the meeting. It took place the next morning in a private suite at a boutique hotel downtown. When I walked in, Vera was already sitting with a tablet in hand, her silver hair pulled back in a bun so tight it could cut marble. She offered no small talk, just tapped the screen and turned it towards me. Sienna's face filled the screen. A video. I didn't recognize it at first. Then I did. It was a clip taken at an after-party, one I didn't know about. She was drunk, sitting on Braxton's lap, whispering in his ear, laughing like a college freshman. The camera angle was slightly from above. Someone had recorded it silently, probably for blackmail, gossip, or revenge. She was representing the company at this event, Vera said dryly. The man next to her is in direct conflict with a client she was pitching 2 days later. That client has since pulled out. I blinked. I didn't record that video. I know. There was a pause, a deliberate one. We believe Braxton's behavior was not an isolated incident, and we believe your wife may have facilitated more than one inappropriate convergence of business and personal interests. Which means this isn't just a scandal, Mr. Rundle. It's a legal liability. She leaned forward. You are not just the betrayed husband in this story. You are the only person who seems to have connected the dots before this all exploded. You understand patterns, behavior, paper trails. Most importantly, you were watching when everyone else was performing. I stared at her, not knowing what to say, and then she said something I haven't been able to get out of my head since. I need someone who understands what's really at stake. Someone whose emotions have already been carved down to the bone. I don't need anger. I need perspective. I didn't nod, I didn't smile, but I didn't say no either, because in that moment, in that precise second, I realized the power had shifted again. Sienna had always painted herself as the power player, but now she was the headline, and I was the byline she never thought would show up in the story. The first time I saw Sienna cry during all of this wasn't because she was sorry. It was because she realized she had lost control of the narrative. It happened 5 days after the party. 5 days that felt like a slow, suffocating collapse. On the outside, things were quiet. No big scenes, no screaming matches. We were still living in the same house, still brushing past each other in the hallway like strangers in a shared Airbnb. But the silence was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, predictive, like the calm before a courtroom verdict. That morning she sat on the edge of the bed with her phone glowing in one hand, the other pressed to her temple. Her inbox must have been a battlefield. She was biting her lower lip the way she always did when she was trying to hide a tremor. I didn't say a word. I stood in the doorway with a mug of coffee, waiting to see which version of her would show up. She didn't speak for almost a minute. Then, finally, someone leaked internal footage to the legal department. I took a sip. Footage? Her eyes flickered to me for just a second. From that night at Zlatan Enver. From the firm's private Slack. I thought it was all deleted. It wasn't, because I had it and I hadn't leaked it yet, but I wasn't the only one watching. Someone else inside her company had started pulling at the thread. Maybe someone she had stepped on. Maybe someone who watched Brax strut around like a god and Sienna pretend she was untouchable. Either way, the storm was now coming from more than one direction. The walls were closing in. I didn't need to say anything. She was unraveling without me. That same afternoon, Vera sent me a text. Just one line. She's desperate. Stay silent. You're winning. It didn't feel like winning. No, it really felt like I was watching someone I used to love drown in the water she had poured herself. And I was holding the rope, but not throwing it. I told myself it was justice. But there were sharp, intrusive moments when I wondered if I was becoming something worse than a betrayed man. I was becoming addicted to the power. Later that night, Sienna knocked on my office door. That alone was strange. We hadn't knocked in years. She came in slowly wearing an oversized hoodie that didn't belong to her and no makeup, as if to remind me she was human again. She sat on the edge of the sofa and took a deep, shaky breath. I know you hate me, she whispered. I didn't answer. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand something. Braxton was an escape. It wasn't love. It wasn't about replacing you. It was about feeling like I mattered somewhere, that I had power again. But he used me, treated me like I was disposable, and now, she broke off. Now it's all gone. Your leverage, your shield, your edge, I thought. She looked at me with red but dry eyes. If I lose this job, I don't know who I am anymore. There it was, the root of it all. This wasn't about me, it never was. It was about identity, about who she became when the world started treating her like someone important and who she was afraid of becoming if all that was taken away. And for the first time, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then she added something that turned my stomach. If you could just talk to Vera, tell her it wasn't what it looked like. I know she respects you. I know you talked to her. Just help me put the pieces back together. I stared at her. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for a lifeline. She thought I still wanted to protect her, and for a moment I thought maybe I did. But then I remembered the nights I spent awake wondering why my wife looked at her phone more than me. The excuses, the gaslighting, the smile she gave Braxton, the one she told me she didn't remember. So I said what she never expected. I'm not here to protect you anymore, Sienna. I'm here to finish what you started. Her face went blank, as if I had unplugged her from the Matrix. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out, and in that moment, she looked so small. And that's when I knew it wasn't me who had been broken. It was me who walked through the fire and kept walking. And she was just now realizing that the fire never stopped burning. The company conference was scheduled a month before the scandal broke, but they didn't cancel it. That's how corporate machines are. Even when parts fall off, they just keep moving. The PR team tried to patch up the event, framing it as a celebration of resilience and reinvention, which was ironic considering two of the keynote speakers were no longer employed. Braxton's name was scrubbed from the agenda as if he had never existed, but Sienna, she was still on the program, still listed as the Director of Strategic Communications, still standing under a spotlight. Even though she was a whisper away from drowning in it, I wasn't supposed to be there. She didn't know I had registered using a friend's name. She didn't know I still had access to the registration portal, and she definitely didn't know I was sitting near the back of the ballroom, dressed like one of the many faceless consultants who wandered through the event, drinking hotel coffee and waiting for the free lunch. I watched her walk onto that stage as if nothing had happened. Impeccable hair, perfect posture. Her voice didn't shake. Her words were polished. That was her superpower. She could lie while looking straight into the lens, and people wanted to believe her. She talked about adaptability, about trust, about rebuilding. Sometimes the greatest challenges come from within, she said, her hands gently clasped. And sometimes we have to admit we've made mistakes in order to evolve. Elegant, measured, it was almost impressive until she crossed the line. In any strong partnership, she continued, personal or professional, there must be honesty. I'm proud to say I have always held myself to that standard, even in times of adversity. I laughed out loud, not loud enough to cause a scene, just loud enough to hear myself break. She looked straight ahead, but for a fraction of a second her composure cracked. A blink that was too long, a breath that caught in her throat, and I knew she saw me. She just couldn't prove it. When she stepped down, there was polite applause. It wasn't enthusiastic, it was cautious. People were no longer sure what they were clapping for. An hour later, the event organizers announced an adjustment to the schedule. Sienna's second panel, a live Q&A on reputation management, was quietly removed. I knew why. Because someone had just uploaded a new file to the press tip inbox used by tech reporters, a PDF compiled from 2 untraceable email accounts, filled with everything that hadn't made it into the HR complaint. Not just the texts, not just the photos, but deposition records, flight confirmations, expense report anomalies. I didn't upload it, but I had passed the folder to someone who would. Her name was Kim. She was a junior employee, sharp as glass, the kind who had watched Sienna take credit for her work and smile as she did it. I never asked her to do anything. I just showed her the truth. She chose what to do with it. That's what made it perfect. I didn't need revenge. I didn't even need to be the one to pull the final lever. All I had to do was remove the illusion of who Sienna was and let the people around her decide how far she would fall. Later that night, when we were back at home, in that too-quiet house, she finally broke. Not with anger, not with denial. She sat on the floor with her back against the kitchen cabinets, her knees pulled to her chest like a child. I don't know how to be anyone else, she whispered. Everything I built, everything I was good at, it's all poison now. I said nothing. She looked up at me with empty eyes. You win, she said. Is that what you want to hear? You win, Wendell. But she didn't get it. This was never about winning. It was about stopping the lie, the one she told everyone and the one I kept telling myself. That love makes it okay to be small, that silence is noble, that trust can survive betrayal if you just believe hard enough. But boundless faith isn't love, it's surrender. And I was done surrendering. I never got a thank you. Not for the years I stood by her. Not for the nights I stayed up fixing her printer at 2 a.m. or the weekends I spent proofreading presentations I didn't understand just so she could sleep. And certainly not for the way I kept her secret long after it stopped being one. But I didn't need a thank you anymore. I needed peace. It came quietly, like most real things do. The day after her public downfall, after the panel was canceled, after the reporters started circling like sharks, Sienna took a leave of absence. Not a resignation, not officially, just a graceful pause meant to soften the headlines. We both knew it was the beginning of the end. She stayed in the guest room for a while. The same guest room I had painted the summer we moved in. It used to smell like fresh pine and new beginnings. Now it just felt like a holding cell for someone who used to be important. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. It was worse than that. We became roommates with memories. Memories that echoed in the corners of our house like voices in an empty museum. Once beautiful, now just relics. One night, after days of silence, I found a letter on my desk, handwritten, no envelope. Wendell, I don't know how to apologize, so I won't. But I want you to know I've been reading the things you didn't say, the things I never gave you credit for. And I'm sorry I spent so much time performing a life instead of building one with you. When you're ready to be free of me, I won't fight. That one. I folded the letter, tucked it into the back of my desk drawer, and never mentioned it. Some truths don't need answers, just acknowledgement. 3 weeks later, I filed for divorce. She didn't contest it. No drama, no threats, just 2 signatures on a piece of paper that marked the end of something that had already died long before. And then, finally, I left. But I didn't leave angry. I didn't slam the door. I packed carefully, box by box, room by room. I left the furniture she chose, the decor she loved, the kitchen appliances I never knew how to use. I left behind the things that made the house hers and took only what I needed to start over. I moved into a smaller apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, a balcony just big enough for a chair and a cup of coffee. But for the first time in years I wake up without holding my breath. I go for walks, I cook badly, I read books that aren't about efficiency or leadership. I even signed up for a pottery class on Thursdays. And yes, I'm the worst in the class, but no one there knows me as Sienna's husband. I'm just Wendell, the quiet guy who listens more than he talks and always brings his own mug. One afternoon after class, a woman named June, mid-30s, soft voice, paint under her fingernails, sat next to me and said, "Your hands shake less when you don't overthink it." I smiled. She wasn't wrong. And in that moment I realized something. I didn't need to win. I didn't need to destroy Sienna. I didn't even need closure. I just needed to stop asking for love from someone who only offered power. Now I choose calm. I choose peace. And when people snap their fingers at me, I don't bring them a drink anymore. I leave the room.